My sister smashed my birthday gift and still my parents took her side until my grandpa finally spoke up. I remember when life was normal, when I was just Adam to my parents, not Sophia's brother or the older one. For 9 whole years, I was the center of their universe, their firstborn, their pride and joy. Dad would swing me onto his shoulders after work and Mom would kiss my scraped knees when I fell. They'd beam at me during school plays and hang every scribbled drawing on the fridge. I was loved. I mattered. Then Sophia happened. I was too young to understand the complications of her birth, only that Mom almost died bringing her into the world. Maybe that's why everything changed. They called her their miracle baby, their second chance. I called her the girl who stole my parents. Adam, be quiet, your sister is sleeping, became the household mantra. Adam, give that to Sophia, don't be selfish, the daily command. Adam, why can't you be more understanding? She's just a little girl. I watched from the shadows as my sister transformed from a squalling infant into a manipulative little empress. By 3, she'd mastered the art of the tantrum, knowing exactly when to unleash those crocodile tears. Dad would immediately scoop her up, glaring at me like I was somehow responsible, while Mom fussed and cooed. My precious girl, they'd call her. I wondered what I was. My first birthday after Sophia's arrival should have been a warning. I turned 10, double digits, a milestone. I'd been excited for weeks. Grandpa Thomas and Grandma Margaret came, along with uncles, aunts, cousins. For a moment, I thought things might be normal. Then I heard Dad say, "Everyone, before Adam cuts his cake, little Sophia wants to help her big brother blow out the candles." I protested quietly, "But Dad, it's my birthday." His smile hardened. "Don't be selfish, Adam. She just wants to be part of it." Mom added, "She looks so cute in her party dress. Everyone wants to see her help, don't you?" The family nodded, charmed by my sister's cherubic face and bouncing curls. No one saw my hands trembling as Sophia reached across me, splattering her tiny fists into my cake before helping me blow out the candles. Everyone clapped. Someone took pictures of her, not me. By my 11th birthday, I knew better than to expect anything different. This time, Sophia chose the theme. Princesses, though I'd asked for space. The cake flavor, strawberry, though I'm allergic, and opened my presents first. When I tried to unwrap the only gift addressed solely to me, Mom snapped, "Let your sister help you." I looked around the room, at my father's stern face, my mother's adoring gaze fixed on Sophia, my grandparents' uncomfortable silence. No one would speak up. No one would notice that I was disappearing piece by piece, birthday by birthday, day by day. That night, I heard Grandpa Thomas ask Grandma Margaret quietly, "Don't you think they're being a bit hard on the boy?" But she just shushed him, saying, "It's not our place." I stopped caring about birthdays after that, about holidays, about family gatherings where I'd become nothing but Sophia's backdrop, the reluctant servant to Her Royal Highness. I learned to shrink myself, to expect nothing, to swallow my anger until it burned a hole in my stomach. I was the invisible son, the forgotten child, and I was only beginning to understand how much worse it would get. By the time I turned 16, I'd given up expecting love from my parents. I retreated into my room, into video games, digital worlds where I had control, where I mattered. My grades slipped, the few friends I had stopped calling, my parents barely noticed. "Adam," Mom would call up the stairs, "we need you to watch Sophia." Not "how are you" or "want to talk." Just demands, always about Sophia. They'd tried hiring nannies, but my sister had become such a terror that the first quit after 2 weeks. The second lasted a month. The third refused to be alone with her. But I was expected to drop everything whenever they needed a free babysitter. "She's your sister," Dad would snap when I protested. "Family helps family." Funny how that rule only applied to me. Our conversations became brief, frigid exchanges. "School was fine." "No, I don't need anything." "Yes, I'll be quiet when Sophia's studying." I became a ghost in my own home, materializing only when summoned to serve the princess. Then came my 18th birthday, legally an adult. One step closer to escape. Despite everything, some foolish part of me hoped this milestone might matter. That morning, I overheard Mom on the phone. "We'll take him to Gino's, his favorite restaurant." For a moment, my heart lifted. They remembered. But when we piled into the car, we didn't turn toward Gino's. Instead, Dad drove to Kid Zone, a garish indoor playground for children under 12. My stomach dropped. Surprise, Mom beamed. Sophia loves this place. The party room was decorated with pink streamers and white flowers, Sophia's favorite colors. The cake, when it arrived, matched perfectly. Pink frosting, white floral decorations, exactly like the one at Sophia's last birthday. My name had been hastily added at the bottom. Aunts, uncles, cousins gathered around, exchanging awkward glances. I caught Grandpa Thomas frowning, Grandma Margaret nervously twisting her napkin. When the cake came, Mom placed it directly in front of Sophia. Sweetie, help your brother blow out his candles. 8 years of birthdays stolen. 8 years of disappearing. 8 years of swallowing rage until it became a stone in my chest. Something inside me cracked. Tears burned down my cheeks before I could stop them. Not quiet tears. Ugly, gasping sobs that silenced the room. Adam? Mom's voice held confusion, not concern. I stood, chair scraping across the floor. Do you even see me? Do any of you see what's happening here? My voice broke, but I couldn't stop. For 8 years, I've watched Sophia take everything. My birthdays, my parents, my life. The room froze. Sophia's mouth opened in shocked indignation. 365 days a year, I continued, fists clenched. All I wanted was one day that was mine. Just one. But even that was too much to ask. Sophia's face crumpled on cue. But I just wanted to help, she wailed, tears flowing instantly. Mommy, Adam's being mean. Dad stood, face flushing red. That's enough. You've upset your mother and sister on what should be a happy... Stop right there, Richard. The command came from Grandpa Thomas, who'd risen from his seat, hands planted firmly on the table. Can't you see what you've done to this boy, what you're still doing? His voice rumbled through the room. For years we've watched this favoritism destroy your son. We said nothing because we thought you'd come to your senses. We were wrong. Grandma Margaret joined in, her quiet voice steady. Adam deserves better. He always has. Aunt Claire nodded. I've tried to tell Jessica for years. Uncle Mike added. The boy's right. It's like Sophia's the only child who matters. My parents looked around, suddenly seeing themselves through others' eyes. Mom's face paled. Dad's mouth opened and closed without sound. For the first time, they had no defense. For the first time, everyone could see the truth. In the stunned silence that followed, Grandpa Thomas took control. His voice, usually gentle, carried an authority I'd never heard before. What have you two done to this boy for the past 8 years? He pointed at the ridiculous cake, the childish decorations. A children's playground for his 18th birthday? A pink cake? Are you serious? Mom opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Grandma Margaret stood beside Grandpa, her small frame suddenly powerful. I've watched this for years, biting my tongue, thinking it wasn't my place. I was wrong to stay silent. This ends today. Uncle Mike nodded. We all saw it, but nobody wanted to interfere. We thought you'd realize... Realize what? Dad finally found his voice, though it wavered. We've given both our children everything. Everything? Aunt Claire interrupted. Richard, your son just told you he's been miserable for years. How can you still not hear him? The family I thought had abandoned me was suddenly rallying around me, their voices overlapping in my defense. I couldn't process it. For so long, I'd felt utterly alone. Then Sophia's shrill voice cut through the commotion. Why is everyone talking about him? This is my party. The room went deadly quiet. My sister stood beside the destroyed cake, her face contorted with rage. Nobody cares about me anymore. It's all about stupid Adam. She stomped to the gift table, grabbing the largest box, the new phone my parents had finally gotten me, the one thing I'd asked for. Is this for him? Why does he get the big present? Before anyone could stop her, she hurled it against the wall. The sound of shattering glass was followed by a collective gasp. There! Sophia screamed, tears streaming down her reddened face. Now nobody gets it! Mom rushed to comfort her, but Dad remained frozen, staring at his precious daughter as if seeing her for the first time. The family watched in horrified silence as Sophia continued her tantrum, kicking chairs and screaming that nobody loved her. The monster they'd created was finally visible to everyone, including them. After employees asked us to leave, we gathered awkwardly in the parking lot. Mom approached me, eyes red-rimmed. Adam, I'm so sorry. We can redo your party somewhere else, anywhere you want. Her voice cracked. Just tell us what you'd like. I laughed, hollow and cold. 18 years and this is the first time you've asked what I want? That's not fair, Dad interjected, though his voice lacked conviction. Not fair? I echoed. You want to talk about fair? Mom reached for my hand. Please, Adam. We made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we love you. Don't, I pulled away. I don't need another party, it doesn't matter anymore. Sophia, still sobbing nearby, screamed, Everyone's ignoring me again. Uncle Mike put a firm hand on Dad's shoulder. Richard, what have you done to your son? If I'd treated my kids this way, the family would have disowned me years ago. Grandma Margaret spoke next, her voice gentle but resolute. Sophia needs discipline, structure. If this continues, she'll destroy her own life. Aunt Claire nodded. And yours. And Adam's. Grandpa Thomas stepped between my parents and me. Richard, Jessica. This stops now. Either you fix this situation, or you'll lose more than just your son. You'll lose all of us. For the first time, my parents looked truly afraid. Not for Sophia, but for themselves. The family they'd taken for granted was united against them, and they had no defense. What do we do? Mom whispered, looking from face to face, finding no sympathy. Start by seeing both your children, Grandpa Thomas said firmly, and hope it's not too late for one of them. Everyone looked at me then. I felt their concern, their belated support, but all I could think was, where were you when I needed you? Where was anyone? Adam? Mom tried again, reaching toward me. I stepped back, shaking my head. I've spent 18 years disappearing. Now I'm finally going to do it for real. I turned and walked away, ignoring their calls. For once, I was the one who left them behind. And I didn't look back. I spent that night at my grandparents' house, curled up in their guest room, feeling empty and somehow free at the same time. The next morning, Grandpa Thomas knocked on my door. The family's coming over today, he said, just for you. By noon, the house filled with relatives, the same ones who'd witnessed yesterday's disaster, but now there were no awkward smiles, no tension, just genuine warmth directed at me. We should have stepped in years ago, Uncle Mike said, clasping my shoulder. We failed you, Adam. Aunt Claire hugged me tight. That ends today. They'd brought food, real food, not kid-friendly chicken nuggets or Sophia's favorite mac and cheese. Steaks, grilled vegetables, my favorite chocolate cake with coffee frosting. No pink in sight. After lunch, they led me to the driveway where a car sat with a giant blue bow. It wasn't new, a 10-year-old Honda with some rust spots, but it was mine. We all chipped in, Grandma Margaret explained. You need your freedom, Adam, you've earned it. I ran my hand along the hood, throat tight. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Grandpa Thomas replied. Just promise you'll visit. For the first time in years, I felt visible, valued. It didn't erase the hurt, but it was a start. 2 days later, I returned to my parents' house to collect some clothes. As I loaded my car, I heard a metallic thud from the driveway. Rounding the corner, I froze. Sophia stood beside my car, hammer in hand, her face twisted with rage. The passenger window was already shattered, glass glittering across the pavement. If I can't have a car, neither can you, she screamed, raising the hammer again. I lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. Stop! She writhed in my grip, tears streaming down her face. It's not fair! You get everything now! Dad burst through the front door, face pale. What's happening? He stopped, taking in the scene. Sophia, what have you done? For once, he wasn't looking at me with accusation. Mom appeared behind him, hand flying to her mouth. My God! Sophia broke free, threw the hammer down, and screamed, I hate you all! I want a car too! Adam always gets what he wants! The irony was almost laughable. That night, I overheard my parents arguing, an unprecedented event. Mom was sobbing, begging Dad not to be too harsh with Sophia. But something had changed in my father's voice. She needs help, Jessica, professional help. We've created this behavior. She's just a little girl. She doesn't understand. She's 9 years old and took a hammer to a car. This isn't normal. We failed her just as badly as we failed Adam. The next morning, Dad knocked on my door frame. He looked older somehow, defeated. We've made a decision. Sophia's going to Lakeside Academy. It's a boarding school with structure, counseling. I said nothing. We'll pay for your window, he added. And, Adam, I know it's too little, too late, but save it, I said. I don't need your apologies. He nodded, shoulders slumping. You have every right to hate us. 2 weeks later, Sophia left for Lakeside. She kicked and screamed all the way to the car, begging Mom to let her stay, promising to be good. For once, her tears didn't work. With Sophia gone, the house felt different, quieter. Sometimes I caught my parents watching me, as if seeing a stranger in their home. They tried. Awkward dinner invitations, tentative questions about my day. I answered politely but kept my distance. I found a job at a local garage, saving every penny. In 3 months, I'd have enough for my own apartment. The night before I moved out, Grandpa Thomas invited me for dinner. Your parents made terrible mistakes, he said as we sat on his porch. But don't let that define your future. Don't carry their failures into your new life. I stared at the stars, considering his words. I'm not sure I can forgive them. He nodded. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying don't let what happened back there hold you back from whatever's next. Don't let the past imprison you. The next day, I loaded the last box into my car. Mom stood in the doorway crying silently. Dad offered a stiff handshake. We're proud of you, he said, words that would have meant everything once. I nodded, got in my car, and drove toward my new apartment, my new life. For the first time in years, I wasn't Adam the forgotten or Adam the victim. I was just Adam, and that was enough. I heard about Sophia's struggles through Grandpa Thomas. She'd assumed her experience at Lakeside would mirror her life at home, that she'd be the center of attention, that rules wouldn't apply to her. Reality hit hard. She tried ordering the other girls around, Grandpa said during one of our weekly dinners. When they ignored her, she threw a tantrum in the dining hall. The teachers just let her scream until she exhausted herself. I could picture it perfectly. Sophia's face reddening as her audience failed to respond the way she expected. For the first time in her life, her tears held no power. When that didn't work, she tried a hunger strike. Her defiance lasted less than 2 days before hunger won. Next, she attempted to bully a smaller girl, only to discover that even the meekest students at Lakeside had something Sophia never developed: backbone. She ended up with a bloody nose and a shattered ego. With each failure, the school's restrictions tightened. No special treatment, no exceptions, just consequences. Mom fell apart. Grandma Margaret told me she'd catch Mom sitting in Sophia's empty bedroom, sobbing into one of her stuffed animals. Twice, she tried convincing Dad to bring Sophia home. Twice, he refused. Your father's finally showing some sense, Grandpa noted. But your mother can't accept it. Mom started sneaking care packages to Sophia. Candy, toys, notes promising rescue. When the school caught her, they threatened to restrict her visiting privileges. Instead of backing down, she screamed at the headmistress, causing such a scene that security had to escort her out. Meanwhile, Sophia's behavior worsened. During lunch one day, she climbed onto a table with a butter knife, threatening to hurt herself if she wasn't allowed to go home. In her dramatic performance, she slipped, falling awkwardly. The result? A broken arm, fractured collarbone, and mild concussion. That was the last straw for Lakeside. They transferred her to Pinewood, a facility specializing in troubled children with psychological issues. When Mom learned Sophia was being institutionalized, something in her snapped. During a heated argument, she hurled a whiskey bottle at Dad's face. The resulting gash required 15 stitches, and Mom spent the night in county jail, pending psychological evaluation. Overnight, my father's perfect family image shattered. His wife faced potential assault charges. His daughter resided in a psychiatric facility. His reputation among family and colleagues crumbled. Even the neighbors whispered, and the bills piled up: Lakeside tuition, Pinewood's specialized care, legal fees, medical expenses. The house I grew up in, once a shrine to Sophia's supremacy, now sat half empty, a monument to their failures. Through it all, my phone rang with increasing desperation. Voice messages from Dad asking for advice. Texts from mom's sister saying mom needed me. Emails from dad's lawyer about family matters. I read them all, but answered none. Uncle Mike asked if I felt vindicated. Aunt Claire wondered if I harbored guilt. Grandma worried I might be suppressing my feelings. The truth was simpler. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction at their suffering, not pity for their circumstances, just nothing. The emotional tether that had bound me to that house, that family, had finally snapped. One rainy Tuesday, 6 months after I'd moved out, Dad showed up at my apartment door. Unshaven, thinner, with none of his former confidence. He didn't ask to come in, just stood there, raindrops dripping from his coat. "Your mother's coming home tomorrow," he said. "Outpatient therapy twice a week. Sophia stays at Pinewood through summer." He shifted uncomfortably. "I thought you should know," I nodded. "Adam, I have class in 20 minutes, I interrupted. He nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. "Are you okay?" For the first time, I answered honestly. "Yes, I am." And I was. My life, my real life, had finally begun. I had my modest apartment, my community college classes, my job at the garage. I had Sunday dinners with Grandpa and Grandma, movie nights with friends who actually knew me. I was done being invisible. Done being the forgotten son. My story no longer revolved around them. As I watched Dad walk away, shoulders slumped against the rain, I felt the last traces of bitterness slowly dissolving. Not forgiveness, some things can't be forgiven, but something else. Release. They no longer had the power to hurt me. And that was freedom enough. A year passed. Then another. I graduated from community college with an associate's degree in automotive technology and landed a full-time position at the garage where I'd been working part-time. My boss even hinted at partnership possibilities down the road. My apartment, once sparse and temporary feeling, gradually became a home. Posters on walls, a decent TV, a couch where friends gathered on weekends. Nothing fancy, but everything mine. No princess to demand my space, no parents to dictate my choices. I saw my family, the ones who'd stood by me, regularly. Sunday dinners with Grandpa and Grandma, monthly barbecues at Uncle Mike's, holiday gatherings that felt warm rather than tense. I rarely thought about my parents or Sophia anymore. They were characters from another life, faces that occasionally appeared in dreams but held no power in my waking hours. Until my phone lit up one Tuesday evening with my father's name. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing but mild surprise that he still had my number. I let it ring until voicemail picked up, then set the phone aside and returned to the motorcycle engine I was rebuilding in my living room. 10 minutes later, a text notification appeared. "Adam, please come home. Your mother isn't the same anymore, and Sophia, we can't handle her alone." I read it twice, letting the words sink in. The old Adam might have felt guilty, responsible, obligated. The old Adam lived to fix problems he didn't create. But I wasn't him anymore. I deleted the message and blocked the number. From bits of information through family, I learned the rest of their story. Sophia remained at Pinewood, diagnosed with several behavioral disorders stemming from years of indulgence and lack of boundaries. Jessica developed anxiety so severe she rarely left the house. Richard aged decades in just a few years, worn down by regret and the wreckage of his perfect family fantasy. The house, that shrine to Sophia's supremacy, stood half empty, filled with ghosts of what might have been if they'd seen both their children. On my 20th birthday, I invited friends over, real friends who knew me, not the shadow boy from my childhood. We grilled steaks on my tiny balcony, drank beer, laughed about nothing and everything. As midnight approached, my best friend Marcus brought out a cake, chocolate with coffee frosting, just like I'd always wanted. 20 candles flickered in the darkness as they sang. This time, no one else would blow out my candles. I looked around at their faces, these people who chose to be in my life rather than being forced there by blood, and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with obligation or guilt. I raised my glass. "To my birthday," I said simply. "The first one that's really been mine." They cheered, glasses clinking in the gentle night. As I blew out the candles, I didn't waste my wish on the past. I didn't think about what I'd lost or what had been taken. I wished for what was coming next, for all the birthdays that would truly belong to me. for the life I was building brick by brick, choice by choice. The door to my past had closed, and I had no intention of ever opening it again.